So again, welcome to FI Connects, where we're going to learn together, share together, and be together. And our goal right now, last time we were together, we said we need to be realistic. One size does not fit all. We discussed keeping things simple. Less is more. There'll be less instruction time and more time for independent learning for our kids. And then as a coach, what were ideas for ways to personalize and differentiate and extend and support all of our learners? So again, that session was also recorded, and you can find that session in all of the FI Connect sessions for each group at the bit.ly there located at the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and drop that in the chat as well. So today what we're going to talk about is we're going to focus on, and this was big in the feedback that I've gotten, especially from last time, how do we connect with teachers and how do we continue to support? Lots of questions about what does professional development look like? How do I communicate and really connect with those reluctant teachers who are kind of hiding out? Hopefully today's got some ideas and supports to support and help us there. But before we jump totally in, it's time for us to check in on one another. So in a moment, we're going to kind of break out just for a few minutes into different breakout rooms. I encourage you to open up your microphone so you can talk. Feel free to introduce yourself to your new little mini group. Check in with each other. How's it going? And then the big question. When you think about how you connect with others and how you support them, what questions do you have? And where do you feel like you need help? So, all right, hopefully you weren't sitting in a quiet space, but got to connect and talked to some of the folks that have joined us today. The goal being an opportunity to check in, an opportunity to see some faces and hear some voices other than mine. And I hope that was a positive experience for you. And again, it was short. Last time I tried to make some breakout rooms, it wasn't working. But then there's some people get a little nervous when they feel like they have to be on in a breakout room. We have lost a few people after that experience. But remote learning means we have to be outside of our comfort zone and we have to kind of try this stuff. So hopefully you had a lovely conversation to get us started today. All right, so does anybody want to kind of share or say anything before I move on? Communication is so critical. And like I said, sometimes even though it's uncomfortable, we're the coach. We have to go first. We have to give others permission to kind of stretch and do those things. So does anybody want to grab the mic or share in the chat? Moving on. So when we think of our role as a coach, think about all the hats that you wear on a regular basis, not even this one, this remote learning situation we're in, but all of the roles that we have as a coach and what we do as a coach. We spend a lot of time building trust as a coach. We have to let people know what we're offering. We have to really talk to teachers, listen to what they need. We're observing classes, we're collaborating with colleagues, we're modeling, we're offering lots of feedback. You pretty much have a full plate. And this information comes from a document, that I just put in the chat, the 10 roles of a coach. But then when we really think about in a remote learning situation, these are probably what we're focusing on the most. It doesn't diminish any of the roles that we have or what we do. We still need to promote ourselves and let people know and our colleagues know what we're offering, what supports we have, what our office hours are. We still need to analyze kind of what our teachers' needs are, where they're at. It's harder since we can't, simply just check in with them walking down the hall, for example, in our school setting. We're now in week 4 or 5, depending on where you're at, and hopefully you have some steady ground as to where your teachers may be. But really now is the time for collaborating, preparing materials and resources for support, modeling best practices, and really in this time of crisis, these are probably where your priorities are. So we're going to kind of focus in and land on these primarily, um, as we talk about what our professional development looks like and what our coaching looks like for remote learning. This was hands down the biggest question and the feedback from last week. And these are both really, online teaching is hard, teaching is hard. They're both hard. And as a coach or a media coordinator, that person who's being tasked supporting your colleagues and these educators, you're probably feeling the pressure, right? Our feedback, like I said, was really asking a lot for tips or suggestions. And you're part of this community. You're part of many people working in solidarity together to help our students, to help our teachers. And whether it's the COVID-19 today or some other thing that raises a sense of urgency tomorrow, this is really the number one question that we're going to be focusing on. So I have some things to share with you, but feel free to also share in the chat. So what does our PD look like for remote learning? And more importantly, uh, remote learning in a pandemic situation? So typically you would be able to, walk past a classroom, check in with a teacher, have just some conversation, check in with them. There's so many different ways to do this, but this is a tip of the iceberg conversation we're going to have today and probably continue. So just wanted to say that because this is a pretty big thing we're talking about in the time that we have for today. So this is a modified, just little chart of recommendations when you're thinking about how you're communicating and what you're communicating. So synchronous virtual settings, for example, like this one. It's a great opportunity to check with students, to check in with your teachers and ask like, how are you? Or conferencing in like, what do you need? How is it going? It really gives you the opportunity when having meetings or feedback or professional development sessions in a synchronous setting that offers connection and an ability to be responsive. So just like we are now. But a great way to use asynchronous connection and communication. That's when you're pre-recording yourself or you're putting resources and information out there online. This would be great for short professional development with a clear and concise structure, giving instructions, modeling or demoing, tools and resources. And that is really going to offer the colleagues that you're supporting that flexibility and the ability to rewatch or reread or review what you're sharing with them for clarity. So just kind of, we want to keep it simple, but just a note on how that could support how you're communicating and what you're communicating. So we know that building relationships is certainly key right now and keeping that connection. And you will be getting a PDF of all of these slides with links, everything at the end of the session. So no worries. I know there's a lot on this particular slide. And these are just some check-in questions, suggestions. And I actually modified these from a student opinion piece that ran in the New York Times last week. These were questions that students said that they want to be asked by their teacher. And I thought, well, teachers want to be asked these questions too. So, how is your first days or weeks going? What are your obstacles? Setting up a workspace might be really hard for those that you're supporting. They are not used to working from home. They're used to being in their classroom. They're not used to an office setting. They're used to moving around and connecting with people in the halls and always being on, right, during the school day. Do you have a remote learning routine yet? Routine is very important in these stressful times. When they wake up, when they're going to sleep, are they getting enough sleep? How are they staying focused? Or do they feel like they're really distracted in their home setting? I have an open concept house. That means there's no doors. So I am in a house with 5 other people, my family. I love them very much. sometimes I really wish there was a door to close. So, for example, right now, as I'm talking with you, my stepson's walking around and he's tiptoeing. And that's another reason why I have a virtual screen. So you don't get distracted by the things that are going on in my house, or the fact that my house is currently under renovation and I'm sitting around a bunch of boxes and random things. So, um, and then, asking your teachers, what does remote learning look like for you? What does their day to day look like? How are they teaching? What is their workload? Really getting to the bottom of where they're at. And school is more than just academics. What do they miss about their school life? Talk to them about it. Um, what do they miss? I know they miss their kids, right? They miss their colleagues. They miss doing the after school sports or activities and clubs. And then finally, what additional supports do they feel that they need from you, from their schools, from their friends, from their family, and opening up that dialogue, giving them permission to kind of share and talk to you about those things that are going on with them. And just like I said, I modified these questions. These can easily be used and shared with your staff, so that they can really ask their students these questions too. So you can see where I can change up the text and modify these questions. So feel free to do the same. These are a great place to start in building those connections and community. A big question that we got last time: what do we do about teachers that are hiding out? These resistant teachers who have kind of fallen off the radar. You're reaching out to them, um, and all of the resources that I've been looking at, they really say you're probably, they're probably hiding out because maybe we don't have a strong relationship with them yet, or they don't feel like they have a strong relationship with you yet. Maybe they have there's some obvious resistance to the situation we're in. Nobody signed up for this. It was very last minute, of course, right? And we are building the plane while we're flying it with very few pieces. So there's understandable resistance. Uh, the more questions we ask of these reluctant teachers, or just kind of checking in and informally, hopefully will help bridge that gap. But the more transparent we can be as a coach, the more that we can say, hey, this is why. I just want to check in. How are you doing? How's your workspace? Those questions, those are really going to help us not only build trust, but acknowledge the efforts and the things that we're seeing from that teacher. And sometimes somebody may not be connecting with us. We have to think of what's in our control and what we can do. So I'm seeing in our chat, one of the biggest difficulties: the same teachers generally aren't welcoming in the classroom, could use strategies to reach out and make them feel comfortable. Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, you probably have a guess maybe of why these folks may be resistant or maybe hiding out. In This comes from social emotional learning research out of Yale. It is a way, it's an acronym, a way for building trust to try to support engagement for anyone: teachers, students, families. Um, the idea being that this is going to help us with components or helping process emotional intelligence. We're in crisis mode, so it's very unique and it's very hard to coach because it's not a regular situation. There's so many variables that are unknown, and we can't physically check in with one another. We're not seeing each other, so it just makes things harder, especially connecting like this in a virtual space. It could make people feel uncomfortable if they're not used to being in this space. So Ruler, it's an evidence-based approach for integrating social and emotional learning in schools. It was developed by Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and it applies some good hard science in a really simple way, which is why I like it, to teach teachings that we have historically we call them soft skills, but they're really hard skills to learn. So Ruler teaches the skills of emotional intelligence. They can kind of help. It may be beneficial to kind of have a PD opportunity, right? PD opportunity, just kind of say, hey, let's talk about how you're doing this with your students, but then you can model and you can get them doing some scenarios, and maybe you're going to be helping to get a little bit more understanding of where they're at too. So recognizing emotions in self and others, understanding the cause and consequence of emotions, labeling emotions accurately, expressing emotions appropriately, and regulating those emotions effectively. I know you've seen so much about physical and mental health right now, um, showing empathy, making those connections. It's because we're in crisis mode, um, and because it looks different for everyone, that this is so important. And in past sessions, I did share this Noster model for complex change. And I felt like this actually really applied to what we were talking about as well. And I'm going to drop a link to that in the chat as well. This is really a very useful framework about thinking about change management, any change. And boy, are we in a lot of change right now, right? So according to Noster, these 5 elements are required for effective change. You can see at the top the equation for success: a vision, skills, plus incentives and resources with a clear action plan. That's going to get us where we want to go. We obviously don't have those things right now, right? Your schools and your districts are working on creating a vision and an action plan. As a coach, you're trying to assess what skills are needed, what resources you can provide. And it's hard to kind of see what incentives there are beyond just being there for our kids right now, right? And helping them succeed in this time of crisis and chaos. But what I like about this model is if you can identify a missing piece for someone you're working with, maybe one of those reluctant teachers, um, you can take some action. So for example, you'll see that the equation equals something very different once a piece is missing. And it is linked to an emotional response, frustration, anxiety, confusion. This is a great model to help facilitate some conversations with your staff as well. So if I'm talking with someone, like, if they're telling me they're very frustrated, well, I can ask them, what resources do you have? What resources do you think you might need? How can I support you there? Or if there's a lot of anxiety, which right now there are, because without any warning and without any opportunity for us to build skills for remote learning situations, we were all thrust into it. So, that's probably a missing piece for a lot of your folks, and it's creating a lot of anxiety. So this is a helpful tool in facilitating conversations, but also identifying how can we make it actionable rather than sit in our frustration or resistance. So as we are talking about trust and connections, this is a great place to start. But then what? I have some additional models and ideas for PD, but I want to take a moment and just pause. Is there any questions? Yeah, I like that comment from Pamela. Clearly label and define the frustration. Ask the teacher to be explicit. It does require to have that trust and to create the opportunity that they can feel comfortable in sharing that with you. But lots of listening involved, I'm sure, right now, definitely. So as we look at this particular slide, I'm curious, and feel free to share in the chat, what image best sums up your experience supporting others right now? How are you doing? So A, stressed, but you got this. B, feeling a little overwhelmed. C, alone on an island. Or D, messy but good. Seeing lots of D's and A's. So I've got quite a few confident people, some people feeling like they're a little bit alone. So you've noticed this is the third way I've asked you to engage in this webinar thus far. When you're delivering professional development, think of ways that you can take a moment and ask participants to do something. We want them to be active rather than passive. In my experience right now with webinars, we're really used to sitting and getting because it feels very one way. I sit, I listen, I just copy and paste and write down as many resources as I can get, and then I log out. we don't want to forget that connectivity that we can have as well in these kind of situations. So offering for them to share, taking a moment, doing a poll, doing a check-in, doing something silly or fun, it's going to be helpful for your professional development. So I'm sure, regardless if you're stressed out, messy but good, maybe feeling uh, alone on an island, the goal is to really think about what's important for you and what really matters. So we want to start with small things for ourselves and our colleagues. And if we can model this for our folks, this will be huge. It's the +1 rule. What can I do this week, and what can I do in the next 2 days to be able to meet that goal or that need? So just keeping it small. Right now, there's a lot of folks are just overwhelmed. Our teachers are overwhelmed thinking about all the things that they have to do. And we want to let them know that, yes, they're probably doing enough, right? We want to celebrate that. It doesn't have to be big, but we just have to get them staying positive, staying motivated. Um, we don't think that we're going to transform or create an entire course in the greatest online course that ever existed during this time. It's just not going to happen. It's not realistic. And frankly, we don't really need it right now. So to do a +1, say to yourself, what's important this week? And what can I do? 2 things to help me get there. And many of us are focusing week to week, some of us day to day. And I know I am. We're in survival mode. And so we want to start small. So you can pass that along to your teachers as well. And then, some kind of guidelines, some things to think about as we're creating content and resources to share. Think shorter, and coach to what is needed. So based on what you're hearing from teachers and feedback, there's so much online. There's so many resources being thrown out into the ether, right? It's just easy to get inundated. But what's relevant to your folks right now? What is the need that the teacher has right now? Making sure to record our online sessions for those who can't tune in live. Connectivity is an issue for our teachers too, right? So how can we create opportunities where maybe it's not going to be synchronous? Asynchronous opportunities are going to be super helpful. And then this one's silly, but it's so true. Lighting is important. I'm literally sitting in front of a lamp right now so you can see me. We need to think about virtual eye contact. These smaller sessions let us turn our video on and we can see each other. That's going to have a huge impact versus just kind of staring at the blank screens that have our names on them. So that's important as well. And then of course, incorporating ways to keep our colleagues engaged. So we've done a few polls already. We've done a few different things. And before we go, I'll have a few things to model for you as well. Steal them, take them, run with them. Anything that's going to work to help keep your colleagues engaged. We want them to be motivated to come and connect with you. And we want them to be able to participate and connect. So some other things to think about. Where are you publishing the things that you're creating and curating? If there's a space maybe that you're sharing some of this information and some of this learning. Maybe you have a learning management system that you're already using. A lot of folks are using Google Classroom. I've seen that so if your teachers are using it, they're already comfortable, hopefully, in of using that tool to navigate and to get information. I dropped in the chat 2 things. First, Wakelet. Wakelet is a great tool for you to curate and just add content and ideas. Anybody out there using Wakelet? I'm just curious. So wakelet.com, it's just a bookmarking tool, but it helps you to really organize content and share that content easily. I've even seen Wakelet used to create newsletters, kind of to share out what's happening for folks and just the way that you're laying out both text and links and resources. And then I've also added an example of just curation from Matt Miller, ditchthattextbook.com fame. He has just been curating a whole bunch of resources on remote learning, and it's just all in one page. You have to scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll, but you only have to go to one spot to find the resources. So hopefully you've been thinking about where are you putting resources for your teachers? Is it easy for them to get to? Do they have to do a bunch of clicks to get there, or is it in one spot? So whatever works for you, just think about how that can be helpful. And yeah, Wakelet is worth checking out. It's very easy to use. And honestly, if you're having any trouble using it, contact me and I'll do a quick tutorial. It's super simple. And you can leverage a lot out of its simple platform and interface. And it's free, which is really good. So also, we want to be really transparent about why we're sharing what we're sharing to our staff. If we're saying, here's another example, and here's another thing, and here's, are we filtering some of this content? Or are we throwing spaghetti against the wall, right? We want to make sure that if we're sharing something, it's purposeful. So we want to let folks know, hey, this is why we think this is a good thing for you to check out. And it's going to get them motivated to hopefully click on it and check it out. Yeah, less is more. Less is so much more, right, Pamela? Especially right now when we're just in information overload. I go on Twitter and I see the 50 tools teachers should use for remote learning. And I'm like, nope, pass. That's the wrong message. We don't want to share that. We want to keep it simple. So we want to encourage working groups to collaborate together. What were those PLNs and those PLCs, in the school building? Are they still connecting? Are they working with each other? It'd be worth finding out and how they're supporting each other, because it doesn't all have to fall on your shoulders, right? And then we've seen some really great work in chat forums as optional means of support. I know for my team at the Friday Institute, we use Slack a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with Slack. I'll drop that link in there. It's a long one, but it's a great way just to share documents back and forth. It's like sending, you can organize conversations, and it's a great way to connect with one another. We even have a thread of connections just for those of us that have small children, so we can support each other and connect with each other when we're starting to get a little stressed, right? And then I've seen lots of great things on Google Meet, formerly Google Hangout. And then I've also seen some teachers using a tool called Loom to create some video chats and opportunities for this kind of synchronous conversation. I know a lot of school districts have said don't use Zoom because Zoom is working on ways to bolster their privacy settings and whatnot. So there are other things available. And I see Kathy's note, Slack is awesome. Slack also lets you do video calls and lets you do audio calls, so you can connect with one person or a group of people. It has lots of things that you can leverage, and that's also free too. I only share free stuff. So, and also on here, we've actually, out of this FI Connects coaching group, we've had some folks do Coffee with a Coach, where they just create this time every other day or once a week where you can just informally log in and grab your coffee and just sit and talk with the coach. They're just there. They're online, whether you join them or not. We've seen groups do virtual lunch tables, right? Or maybe even some happy hours of, so you can connect in an informal way that you can just have conversation and continue to build connection. And then, of course, I know you're continuing staff meetings remotely, but to focus on those teachers in an empathetic way. When are they being scheduled? What time and how long, etc. So another model for you real quick is brain breaks. Brain breaks are really important in these sessions. We're here together for an hour, and while that's not a lot of time, I wanted to model a brain break for you. So for the next 20 seconds, we're going to take a break. Feel free to stand up, stretch, reflect, dance, grab a snack, whatever you need to do, just don't leave. All right? So 20-minute brain break.
Ready to the countdown.
All right, and we're back. I feel like, let's fix this really quick. It looks like my screen share had stopped for the moment. And there we go. We'll bring it on back. So brain breaks are a great way just to take a moment to remind everybody that we need a mental break. We need to take our eyes off of a screen for at least 20 seconds after every 20 minutes. There are extensions and things that kind of remind us or help us. A timer is really helpful. Not only is this a great practice for us to model as a coach, but also just remind our teachers, are they incorporating these brain breaks for our kids? So this timer, I just grabbed it off of YouTube and dropped it in. But just anything that's simple that helps us take care of ourselves and take a break. And lastly, feedback as a coach, it's hard because we can't connect as we usually would. In the past, we've probably provided feedback in informal verbal, informal written feedback, informal verbal and written ways. Traditionally, like, you could just swing by a room and check on a teacher maybe that you haven't heard from in a while. But we can't just drop in right now. So our current remote learning situation, one-to-one feedback is essential, but it's going to be really important for us to make sure that a lot of our feedback may be in a synchronous setting like this, where I can see you, I can see your face, you can hear my voice. We don't want to fall down the trap where text or an email might be misinterpreted if we're giving some feedback to our colleagues. So that being said, target your feedback on the task, and really being specific and focused on the process of what that teacher's doing and how you can help. We don't want to target identity. We don't want to call anyone out. We don't want to be too vague. And we don't just want to focus on results. That's not what we're about right now, especially in our current situation. So really thinking about how we can make our feedback as virtual as possible, or pick up the phone. But then asynchronous may not be the best fit to give feedback, depending on what kind of feedback it is. So I'd like to take a moment and give you the opportunity to share. We've talked about a lot of things. We talked about building trust, curating resources, and how we're doing that. How are we modeling? How are we offering feedback? So I've dropped a Padlet into our group chat, and I would love for you to just take a minute, open up that Padlet. You'll see just these big buckets of some of the things that we've talked about. And I would love for you, if you've got something to share, go ahead and drop it into the Padlet. I've added the link to the chat. There's a QR code if you need to scan, whatever works best for you. But I'm curious, do you have something that you're doing in one of these particular larger buckets, or something else? There is a miscellaneous bucket all the way to the right for your other awesome ideas. But just wanted to give us an opportunity in a few moments to kind of check that out, share with one another, and you have access to this Padlet, so hopefully we got some good things cooking in there. So I'm going to open up the Padlet myself and drop it in here. So you can see in real time, look at that, real time feedback happening in real time. Getting the feedback from you right now. How great is that? And feel free, if you're posting, to add your name to your Padlet as well. Like we want to give you shout out. We want to give you credit for your ideas. So in what ways are you experiencing that you're building trust, or maybe something that you want to do and haven't tried yet? Curating resources. Maybe you heard something in here that you want to try, or maybe you found an awesome opportunity or thing that's working for you. Modeling, developing PD. And of course, if there's anything else that I haven't talked about that you want to share, that you feel like you celebrate your awesome, go ahead and drop it in that miscellaneous over on the right. So I'll give you a moment to kind of put some thoughts in, and you can upvote that little heart in the corner. Go ahead and give some love to ideas that you like. I like that. Building trust, asking about personal celebrations each week, paying attention and really listening, being present. That's so important. This is an unprecedented time. We're not really sure the where everyone is, because like I said, some folks are reluctant. Some of our students, we don't know what situations they're in. So yeah, really paying attention, listening. Wakelet, I discovered Wakelet almost about a year ago, and I love it for so many reasons. Blogging is so great. Real-time feedback. People love real-time feedback, don't they, Michelle? It's personal. It lets you know that you care, right? Grade level meetings. We start with a short 15-minute drop-ins, offering dates, time, professional learning. So as these get longer, you notice there's going to be a scrolling bar that you can scroll through each of these. So I wanted to use a Padlet, about the size where a Padlet is appropriate. If we had like 50 more people in this session, this would probably be too much to handle, right? You could do the same with a Google document, or any kind of shared document or tool. Padlet is pretty simple. I like Padlet because I made all of our buckets ahead of time, and then I can just invite you to just like drop in and share. I'm seeing some loves, some little hearts popping up to the ideas. Feel free to share some love on these ideas. Creating a survey for teachers, asking what they need. Sometimes surveys are a great way, especially if it's anonymous. It's a great idea. Tierney, they may feel more comfortable if it's anonymous, right? Rather than just talking to one-on-one. That's a great way to get some information from folks. Simple, relevant, not too overwhelming. Yeah, when we're curating resources, we want to keep it simple. These are all fantastic, you guys. This Padlet's not going anywhere. So as you scroll through all the awesome, I wanted people to put their names on it. So if you share this awesome or you use this awesome with others, make sure you give them credit. We need to pass around the love, right? And in Padlet, they have, the upvoting or the heart or the likes, you can program that in when you create your Padlet boards. I just really like it because it's nice to have people give some love on your ideas and your feedback, especially when you can't see each other, right? So that Padlet's not going anywhere. I love these ideas and these different thoughts. I'm taking a look at our time. I wish we had more time, but I want to leave with just two final thoughts. So one, burnout is real. Hopefully you are not feeling burned out. Hopefully your staff is not feeling burned out. Hopefully your kids are not feeling burned out. There are things that you can't monitor. There's things that we can monitor and there's things that we can't monitor, right? Media consumption is one of them. We're in an unprecedented time where we're on devices and machines more than ever in order to connect, in order to learn, in order to create content. I know I'm working more hours than ever right now, but and you probably are too. So we know that digital platforms are pretty incredible for enabling us to connect with people in the socially distant world. We've perhaps never been more prepared to practice social distancing than we are today. So there's that. But we need to keep in mind there's over 2 decades of research correlating social media use with loneliness, depression, and unhealthy behaviors. So all this technology that we're using, it's great, but again, we need to find that balance, right? So is using the technology, is it helping me feel a greater sense of well-being and connection? Is it making me feel more isolated? Asking those questions may be really helpful. And then, what's the tech routine that works for you and your family, for your teachers, for their staff, for the kids, and really helping to leverage some resources. So I'm going to put in 2 resources into our chat. And this kind of talks to, again, social emotional learning, but really thinking about this idea of burnout. We need to find the balance so that we are not burning the midnight oil, that we're not losing sleep, that we're not depleting ourselves trying to do this work so fast and furiously as we are. So again, we want to think of what matters, and then the things that we can control, that are in our control, and that's what we really need to be focusing on and working on. Please share this with your staff. Get them thinking about this. Make them do the Venn diagram if you need to really hone in on what they need to focus on and what's going to work for them and their kids. So I want to thank you all for sharing the awesome. We are all in this together. You're sharing your ideas on that Padlet. Again, that Padlet's not going anywhere. There's so many great ideas, and folks added their name to it. So if you want to follow up with them or something like that, feel free. But ultimately, in this situation, we need to take a deep breath and know that we are not alone. So I want to thank you all so much for being here today. I'm going to give you a whole bunch of final links and information. So our survey, your survey is super important to help me figure out what you need as I'm developing this content each week for you. And actually next week, I've got some co-presenters from our sessions that are going to share some of the awesome that they're working on. So in the survey, there is a question at the end that says, do you want to be a co-presenter? If you're interested, go ahead and let me know, and I'll follow up with you. Also, let me know what's working and what's not working. What do you need? And I also, I'm going to drop in, here's a PDF of the slides. That's all the slides with the links, so you have that information for you after today. You're going to be able to find all of our recordings on our playlist. And if you'd like to join us again next week, you can find us the same bat time, same bat channel on go.ncsu.edu/FIConnects. So I've dropped a whole bunch of links into that, into the slide, but I'm not going anywhere because I know you're working on the feedback form. When that feedback form is completed, you are going to get a link that pops up. So don't close it out. And that link is going to take you to your certificate of participation today. So that is for 1 hour. It is an auto-generated Google document. So if you do not use Google or you're having issues, please let me know in the chat. But again, that survey link, I'll drop that in there so that you have it. So don't click off that survey once you hit complete too fast if you want that certificate of participation. We understand right now that those are becoming very helpful for folks to turn in to let their schools and districts know what they're up to as they work remotely and from home. And like I said, our YouTube of this session, as well as all the sessions that we've had thus far, complete with links and resources, can be found at our bit.ly YouTube address. We are adding to that, and a recording of this session will be up by the end of today. And please pass on the love, pass on that we are continuing FI Connects. This is the schedule for April, and as we get closer to May, we are going to poll the group and see how you best would like to see FI Connects continue to support you. So with that being said, thank you all so much for your time today, for your thoughts, and for all of the feedback and the sharing. Here are all the links that I've dropped into the chat, so you're not going to miss a thing. And I will hang out here to answer any questions and support you any other way that you need. So thank you all so much. And if you've got a question, feel free to use the chat or grab the mic. Thank you for what you do every day and for how you're supporting teachers and students across the state, across the nation. And hey, we've got some international people too, so across the world. Thank you very much.